What's up, YouTube? Back at it again with another banger video. This time we're looking at Superman Annual number 11 from 1985. This is the story For the Man Who Has Everything, written by Alan Moore and drawn by Dave Gibbons. If it seems familiar to you, maybe you've seen the Justice League episode that adapted this story. That was my introduction to it, and it's also probably the reason that I'm a fan of the DC Universe today. It was a faithful adaptation of this story with a few small differences, but let's get into the story. So a device that they use in this book is a color border around the dream sequences. So anytime you see like this red border in the gutters, you know that it's his vision, it's his dream, whatever you want to call it. It starts out on Krypton. We get to see what Kal-El's life would have been like if his home planet were never destroyed. Kal-El comes home from work. He works at the Institute of Geology, where he studies the Kandor crater. Kandor is the city that Brainiac struck down and put into a bottle. And he's been studying the rocks left behind from that. He gets home, and his family has thrown a surprise birthday party for him. And we see that he has a wife, 2 small kids. You'll see on the next page, there's no border. That means that this is the real world. This is what's actually happening. You see, it's the Arctic Circle, February 29th. That happens to be the day I'm filming this video. It's Superman's birthday today. Happy birthday, Superman. And Batman, Robin, and Wonder Woman have all come to the Arctic Circle, to the Fortress of Solitude, to have a surprise birthday party. So they get there. The door to the Fortress of Solitude is open already. They walk in, and they freeze in shock at what they're seeing. There's Superman here with this strange flower plant thing wrapped around his chest. And we see the credits and the name of the story. For the Man Who Has Everything, Alan Moore, writer, Dave Gibbons, artist and letterer. You'll recognize those names from Watchmen. They walk up to Superman. They're examining this plant, this flower thing that has him frozen. They say it's got him cut off from all sensation. His pupils aren't contracting even slightly. He's in his own world. So, in this story, Superman's been sent this flower in this container. And when he opened it up, it latched itself onto his chest. And it's sort of a parasite. It feeds off of its host, but it also sedates them by giving them their greatest dream. So Superman is trapped inside this dream world of what if Krypton had never been destroyed, while this plant is feeding off of him in the real world. We turn the page, and we're seeing his dream world. And you'll notice there's a lot of these like match cuts of, see, Superman there, and it's like a mirrored image here of him in his dream world. And they're talking about his dad. He's kind of grown apart from Jor-El. He didn't come to their surprise birthday party. And he goes to visit him the next day. In this version of events, Jor-El has become a disgraced scientist since he made that prediction that Krypton would explode. And since it didn't, he's been let go from his position as one of the head scientists in Krypton. Since that has happened, he's sort of gotten involved with these shady figures, these religious zealots, these militarized people. Kal-El wants to know why he's associating with these types. These guys are part of the old Krypton movement, and Jor-El is becoming a part of it. He's getting wrapped up in it. And Kal-El says, "Old Krypton movement? You're not really going through with that." Jor-El replies, "Someone has to. Look around you, Kal. What's happened with Krypton? There's the drug traffic and glamour assaults and Hell Blossom coming in from Urkel. There's the racial trouble with the Vathlo Island immigrants." So Jor-El has kind of gone down the alt-right pipeline. And Kal-El is just, he's growing estranged from his father. I've read the Alan Moore book on writing comics, the book that's like full of essays, And when you read that book, you realize that he is really thinking about these stories a lot and thinking them through deeply and thinking about it like a real author, putting metaphor in his comics. And I don't think it's any accident that this next scene happens. They're out on Jor-El's balcony. He has this crystal orchard. And in one of the tree branches, there's this bird feeding its babies, a worm. And Jor-El smashes the nest with his cane. And it's a metaphor for Kal-El and Jor-El growing apart. We see the head of the parent bird. Sort of a destruction of the parental role. Back in the real world, we see who delivered this present to Kal-El. It's the villain Mongul. This is their first time ever meeting this villain. Superman has met him in the past, but Batman, Robin, and Wonder Woman are meeting him for the first time here. He explains his plan here. The flower's called the Black Mercy, and he traveled into the Tangled Zones to locate it. It's a cross between a plant and an intellectual fungus. It attaches itself to its victims in a form of symbiosis, feeding from their bio-aura. It grants them their heart's desire. He says, of course, its victims could shrug it off. They just don't want to. After he's explained his plan, he asks them, which of you would it be polite to kill first? And Wonder Woman walks up to him and hits him as hard as she can, and he doesn't even fall over from his kneeled position. He says, I think that gives me my answer. We cut back to Superman's dream. Kal-El and his son are showing up to the emergency room, where Kara, Supergirl, has been attacked. She's in the ER now. She was being attacked because of her ties to Jor-El and his affiliation with that old Krypton movement. We see this pamphlet here. This was foreshadowed on the first page of the comic. This is Jax more than 20 years ago in Limbo. He was put into the Phantom Zone. The Phantom Zone was discovered by Jor-El when he was younger. There are protesters who are not fans of Jor-El, who see the Phantom Zone as a form of cruel and unusual punishment. And that's why they've attacked Kara. The nurse was distracting Kal-El's son. And as they get ready to leave, he calls his wife and tells them to meet them at her father's house. So they're going to live with Kal's in-laws. As Kal and his son leave the hospital, they come across this blockade. And it's that group, the old Krypton movement. They're having like a parade through town. Back in the real world, Mongul is fighting Wonder Woman. He throws her through this wall and into the Hall of Weapons, which is where Superman, keeps the weapons that he confiscates from villains and from other worlds. I really like this panel here. Mongul is so condescending. He says, "Oh dear, is that a neural impactor? Do they still make those? I'd advise you to try the Plasm Disruptor. It's smaller, more of a female's weapon." And Wonder Woman, of course, shoots him after that remark. But it doesn't do any good. You see, it has no effect on him. Meanwhile, Batman and Robin are trying to figure out a way to remove this plant fungus thing from Superman. They realize that they're no physical match for Mongul, so their best bet is to try and bring Superman into the fight. Back in the dream world, Kal-El is trying to make his way through this parade of these old Krypton people, and he sees who's up on the stage at this rally, but Jor-El, his father. And he doesn't want his son to see this, so they get in a car and they drive off in the other direction. And Kal's son is like, "Where are we going? This isn't the way to Grandpa's house." He says, "No, we're just going by the Kandor crater." And his son asks, "Will it get shrunk up?" And he says, "No, that happened a long time ago." So this is the crater where Kal-El had been working earlier that day. And he gets out, he walks around to the center of the crater. His son is following him, kind of scared. His father's acting weird, and the wind starts to pick up. And he gives his son a hug, and he says, "I don't think you're real." Batman is starting to pull on this plant, and it's losing its grip on Kal-El's mind. And he's starting to realize that it's a dream. His son starts to fade away right as Batman gets the flower off his chest. As soon as he gets it fully pulled off, it latches onto him, and we're taken to Gotham a few decades ago, and we see Bruce Wayne walking home with his parents, and they get mugged in the alley, but this time Thomas Wayne is able to fight off the mugger. This time we're seeing Batman's fantasy. But Superman's awake now, and he says, "Who did this to me?" He realizes, who it could be. He knows it's Mongol, and he goes to help Wonder Woman in the fight. Meanwhile, Robin puts on the gauntlet gloves that Mongol was wearing, and he tries to pull this flower off of Batman now. He finally gets it pulled off, and he runs away with it, taking it back to Superman. Superman fighting Mongol. They have a knockdown, drag-out fight. Mongol punches Superman so hard he goes up a story in the Fortress of Solitude, up to the animal enclosure part, where Superman has this zoo full of animals, and Superman hits him with heat vision. Robin gets there, and he's like, "Oh, they've gone up a level," and he has a hard time. There's no stairs in Superman's house because he can just fly. So he has to find a way to get up a story without using stairs. So he puts the plant into one of the gloves. He takes off his cape. He wraps it around the glove. He puts that on his belt. He puts the other glove on his belt too. He takes off the bat rope, and he climbs that bat rope to get up to the story that they're on. They're still battling it out amongst these animals. This would be awesome in a movie if we saw like this kind of fight in the Fortress of Solitude. It reminds me of the game Injustice. There was an arena in that game where you could fight in the Fortress of Solitude. And as they're fighting, Mongol gets the upper hand. He jumps on top of Superman, and they go back down a level through the floor. And now they're in the room with the statue of Kal-El's parents. In the real world, Kal-El has always had this idealized version of his parents in his head, since he never actually got to meet them, really. So in his dream world, it's kind of become this disillusionment of actually meeting your biological parents and realizing that they're not perfect people. But in the real world, he's always had this perfect idea of them. So they're fighting it out down there. Robin sees that they've gone down a level again. Mongol starts to win this fight. But right at the very end, before he deals the death blow, Robin drops that flower down on him, and it latches onto his chest. And we see Mongol's fantasy. Mongol's fantasy is he kills Robin right away, and then we see that's not the case. He smashes Superman's head in. That didn't happen. And he goes on to rule the world. But really, he's just in that dream state. So after the fighting's over and everyone's safe, they're able to give their presents that they brought to Superman. Wonder Woman brought him a replica of Kandor, the city that had been shrunk by Brainiac, the city that was in the place of the crater from before. Superman already had one. He uses his super speed to go hide the one that he already has, and comes back and says, "Oh, that's just what I've always wanted." And you can't really tell if they're kissing or not here, or if this is just a hug. But he says, "Why don't we do that more often?" And she says, "I don't know, too predictable." And Batman, he brought Superman a new flower, a new strain of flower that had just been discovered. There's a rose called the Krypton, but unfortunately in the fight it got destroyed. And it's sort of a metaphor for what happened to the real Krypton. And Superman says maybe it's for the best. And he says, come on. And he's like, does somebody want to make coffee while I clean up the place? And the story ends with Mongol's fantasy of him ruling the world. Everyone's a slave. We see this line of people: Brainiac, Adam Strange, a few other people here. And he's back on World. And it says he is content. And that's how they end it. Also, one more thing I want to say here. If we go back to the beginning of this story, look at this. You can tell Robin's cold there. Batman brought this young teenage boy to the Arctic Circle wearing no pants, just the little briefs that he wears, no jacket. Batman is a terrible father figure. I'm just saying, like, he should have his kids taken away from him. I mean, at least give the boy some pants. Come on. But anyways, that's For the Man Who Has Everything. I hope you enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite standalone Superman issues. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit like, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.